Stop letting your limiting beliefs run your life. The deeper I have stepped into leadership roles over the years, the louder the voice inside of me grew saying, "You are not good enough." And instead of ignore that or shove it down, push it away, and avoid it, I finally decided to speak directly to it with love and compassion versus shame or judgment. We all have limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs are such a huge factor, especially when you're finding yourself taking on more responsibility, whether you're an entrepreneur, CEO, or executive, you lead a team, you're taking on more leadership positions, you're having people look up to you, or you're delegating to others. You find yourself perhaps having limiting beliefs. I know for myself that this specific limiting belief of not being good enough has showed up throughout my entire life, especially recently as I take on more and more leadership roles. Now that root belief for me comes from childhood. If you know where the root cause of your limiting belief comes from, it's a really cool thing to actually go back and to revisit the memory, not relive the memory, but revisit the memory so that you can receive the lessons. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about limiting beliefs. I'm going to talk about specifically this one as my story, for example, how I overcame it and what I learned, insight that I can share tools with you that possibly can help you along your journey as you overcome your own limiting beliefs as well. Now, this one for me, not being good enough, like I said, was definitely rooted in being a child who was bullied quite often throughout my entire elementary and middle school experience, even a little bit in high school as well. But having had those experiences, it wasn't just about forgetting about them because the subconscious or in our bodies are not going to forget about it. It's going to be stored inside of us at some capacity. And it wasn't about going back and reliving it either. There's no need to go back and to relive painful or dangerous experiences. It took a different couple of different tools that I'm really excited to share with you because it's something that I didn't used to be so good at, and one of them in which was vulnerability. Using vulnerability as a tool has been a huge game changer in how I show up and how I rock my limiting beliefs and get rid of them completely and fully. As well as forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of those things that is just entirely overlooked. You think that when you do something wrong, you say sorry, you apologize, or you're given forgiveness for making a mistake, but it can go as far as giving and receiving forgiveness from yourself. I know that using forgiveness around limiting beliefs, especially tracing it back to that root cause, is a huge, huge help. Not only using vulnerability and forgiveness, releasing it, and then celebrating that you've just released it. When you actually celebrate the fact and recognize that it's a problem, not only are you becoming more aware about it and you're having really good self awareness, but you're giving yourself permission to let go of a part of you or an identity that no longer serves you. And in this case, that limiting belief of you're not good enough was not serving me. I can't think of one area of my life in which that belief would have served me or would serve me in the future. And so instead of avoiding it, instead of pretending that it doesn't exist, instead of shoving it down because it's going to be stored somewhere in my biology to some capacity, I decided to face it head on and to actually speak to it using those skill sets and those tools of vulnerability, forgiveness, release work, and of course celebration. Because once you celebrate that you faced it, that it is the reality, or rather was your reality and no longer is holding you back, then you get to actually move on. And when I say move on, I mean take action. I'm not saying that you're not going to feel the fear or feel the doubts come up in the moment, because you most likely will. I know from my experiences, I have felt those doubts come up, but it's the fact that you take action in spite of it anyways. And so in today's episode, I really want to get into a recent one for me, which was you are not good enough, how I've overcome that, what type of tools that I've done and used to get rid of that limiting belief, and how I'm not allowing it to define me any longer. Something really interesting about limiting beliefs is that it's coming from a past experience. A lot of times it's a childhood wound, something that's happened to you in the past, whether you were taught this from a parent or guardian, your school system, any exposure that you had, especially between those years of 7 to 12 years old, where we're very easily imprinted, we're very easily influenced, and we have a lot of different life lessons trickle through during those years that are permanently implemented into our systems until we, with intention, take them out. And so this one for me was pretty hardcore because it came when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, being bullied from a really young age at school. And so knowing where that root cause was, using those tools that I just mentioned, vulnerability, recognition, release work. Also, of course, I've used NLP and mental emotional release therapy on it. If this resonated with you, we'd love to have you part of the community. Go ahead and check out wearemovewithintention.com. You can apply there for one of our programs to see if we can serve you in the best possible way. And then celebrating that it's no longer a boundary and a limitation that I'm going to allow to hold me back anymore allows me to move on and take action even when those doubts come up. And that has been the huge factor in taking action. Not necessarily pushing myself to, okay, I can't think this anymore, Lacey, change the thought. Not pushing myself, but allowing myself to recognize it, to speak to it, rather that's going back to an old memory and having a hard or difficult conversation with myself, asking myself for forgiveness, asking the people who maybe bullied me for forgiveness, and just actually letting that play out in your mind. Because something really cool is this thing called your critical faculty. Your mind doesn't know the difference between imaginary and real life. So when you, with intention, take the time to pour into yourself, whether that's opening a hard conversation, going back and releasing those negative emotions, using vulnerability and talking about it with your loved ones, people who you trust and fully can open up to and express how you feel and why you've had these experiences and how this is a limiting belief for you. Speaking to it with love and compassion versus ignoring it with shame or guilt, it changes the entire game. And I want to explain a little bit of how I was able to use those tools and what that looked like, and then the lessons that I learned from the entire experience. So, how did I overcome this limiting belief? What I actually want to do right now is walk you guys through how I overcame that limiting belief of not being good enough using the MOVE method and these 5 tools specifically. The first tool being recognize. If I didn't take the time to recognize that this was a limiting belief, it would have continued to block me time and time again. And that in itself is just opening up your awareness, having a really, really solid self-awareness in what serves you, what doesn't serve you, how are you acting or reacting, and then taking that information and using it as reflection, using it as a mirror in a non-judgmental, loving, compassionate way. And so by allowing myself to recognize, okay, this is actually a limiting belief that's hanging us up, that's holding us back, and that's setting us up time and time again for failure when we came here to win. And so when I got really clear on that recognition, I realized that's not my truth. That's an old story. And when you label it like an old story instead of it being a truth, it shifts something enormous in your body and in your mind. That alone does a lot of work for you. Taking the time to recognize it also lets you take your power back instead of it having the power on you. I know that when I would feed into it over and over and over again, I can't do this because of this belief. I can't show up because of this belief. The more that I would feed into it, the bigger that it would get, the more of a big deal it would be, and the more of my energy it would suck. And I think that by taking the action to recognize it as limiting belief, but then not define it as something that's limiting me anymore, because I know that I'm here to release it, I'm here to let go of it, that actually moved me into the second step, which was forgiveness. Using forgiveness is such a powerful tool. We think of forgiveness, and a lot of times we go to ourselves and others, but we can use forgiveness with ourselves. We can use forgiveness with people that we'll never talk to again. And I know from experience with this example specifically, the I'm not good enough belief, I used a lot of forgiveness. Going back to the past, utilizing forgiveness with those who had bullied me, those who had hurt me, different things that I was told or taught I should or should not do, utilizing forgiveness around those released a lot of negative charge and a lot of weight that was just automatically in my backpack on my back, something that I didn't necessarily need to be carrying around. Forgiveness is a huge gateway. It's a gateway into peace. And no, it's not to excuse what anyone has done to you. I was not excusing anyone's words or anyone's bullying from my younger years. However, I was reclaiming my own peace because I know at the end of the day that those apologies may never come. I may never have those conversations, but in my head and in my heart and even out loud, I get to have those conversations. I get to ask for forgiveness. I get to receive forgiveness. And in that fact, I get to have peace from within. And having peace from within is not something that you can buy. You can't go to a store and purchase it on a shelf. It's something that you have to choose to do with intention and to do the work around it. If this resonated with you, we'd love to have you part of the community. Go ahead and check out wearemovewithintention.com. You can apply there for one of our programs to see if we can serve you in the best possible way. Having that peace came from forgiveness for me, which led into the next step. The next step being release. Release is a huge one. And of course, there's lots of tools around the word release out of this step. I did release work with MER, NLP, breath work, movement, anything that felt good for me at the moment regarding this belief that allowed me to expand my perspective, open my horizon, and realize this is not my truth. It's no longer mine to hold on to. It's already gotten my forgiveness and I've received its forgiveness. How can I release it so that it's no longer part of my identity? And when I say identity, I mean who I am as a person. How can I detach myself and disassociate myself from this limiting belief, this simple phrase that has held me back for years and years and years? A couple different examples come to mind of being asked to present or being asked to go on stage and thinking, I'm not good enough for that or I'm not ready for that. And then passing up those opportunities because of this limiting belief specifically. And so doing the work around it was powerful for me because it gave me my power back in releasing it from my entire system. Not just my mind, not just being in my mind as a phrase that runs often if I'm put into a challenging position or a leadership role, but releasing it from my body, from my heart, from my energy, because there will be no more energy put into that limiting belief. As soon as you cut off energy, you're not feeding it anymore. And if you're not feeding it anymore, then it begins to shrink and shrink and shrink. And the smaller that it gets, the less significance that it has in your life and about yourself. And so for me in this step, release was super powerful. And I am a very active person. I love to dance, I love to move. And so a big one for me was exercise, but not exercise as if, okay, I have to work out today. It was just free form movement, whatever felt good, and proving to myself, showing myself that, hey, this thing, be push-ups or pull-ups, for example, that used to be so difficult or not even possible for me years ago is now possible. And that in itself is proof that I am good enough, that things do get to change, that I don't have to hold on to something that's no longer mine to keep. Release work is super powerful. And you can do it in many different ways. Like I said before, breath work, MER, mental and emotional release therapy, utilizing NLP tools, meditation, visualizations, opening up hard conversations, and just actually having those hard conversations with yourself is a huge release of energy. It's not that you're going back to relive those memories, you're not bringing back those same emotions, but you are receiving the lessons. When you receive the lessons and you ask your subconscious to go ahead and release those negative emotions, you don't need to be tied to it anymore. You don't need to have it in your system. It automatically does the work for you and it releases it and it lets it go. And then you not paying attention to it, me not paying attention to this limiting belief in this case, did not feed it any fuel or gasoline, which meant it got smaller and smaller and smaller on my scope and less important as something that I was no longer pouring energy into. The next one is going to be celebration. And if you've watched other podcast episodes, I'm sure I've talked about celebration. Celebration is a huge tool, something that I think a lot of adults overlook. And it's seen as something that kids do more often. We celebrate birthdays, we celebrate holidays, we celebrate the normal standard things. But what about celebrating your wins? What about celebrating your challenges? What about celebrating when you do release work and you decide to let something go that no longer serves you? Because every single micro win that you have, that you intentionally celebrate, adds to your neurology that you're doing something right, that you're taking a step forward, and that you're changing your identity. I know for me personally, celebration has been such a powerful tool. And every time that I take on something that's a challenge and I show up, whether it goes exactly how I had planned or not, I've shown up. I've done the work, I've done the time, I've put my love, my heart, my energy, and my soul into it. That for me is the work. That's the convincer. That's the proof that my system needed to see, to feel, to embody. That proves that old story, that saying, I'm not enough. Where did that come from? That's not us anymore. That might have been from the past. That might have been words from someone else, but that's no longer in our backpack. It's no longer in our toolbox. And we're no longer carrying that around anymore. And so every time you celebrate one of your micro wins or your big wins at that, you're adding proof to your list of proof for convincer and really reinforcing with yourself, okay, I can do this. I get to do this and I am good enough. Whatever your limiting belief is, this is just mine in this case for this example. And then the last tool that I utilized in this limiting belief, for example, specifically was move. Now, move in this case is move on, take action, start embodying a new identity. Because if you keep doing hard things, if this resonated with you, we'd love to have you part of the community. Go ahead and check out wearemovewithintention.com. You can apply there for one of our programs to see if we can serve you in the best possible way. Putting yourself into new situations, taking on new responsibilities, new obstacles, and that limiting belief keeps coming back up and you feed into it, you're just going backwards in time. You're just going backwards in the loop and recommitting that same pattern. What we want to do in this phase for move, and what I did specifically, was allow myself to embody a whole new identity. So what's the opposite of I'm not good enough? I am enough. I'm more than enough. And by embodying that in itself, not only by thinking it, but by feeling it, having visualizations about it, taking action on it, and feeling it in my body as I took the actions, that's where it was installed. That's where it was truly installed into my system, not only as something cute and fun to do, and we got to move on and get over it. It came from a family where my family used to say, like, rub some dirt on it, get over it. It was rather installed into my system, my neurology, my biology, and I started to act like the woman who was enough. Started to act like the woman who was more than enough. And in moments of doubt, when the doubt or the fear or the worry came knocking on the door, I told them that we weren't home and that they were not allowed to come anymore. And I had conversations. Sometimes it's a hard conversation. Sometimes it's not easy because you have to choose. But at the end of the day, it's always a choice. And when you do the work around a limiting belief, it's up to you to not blame, but to take responsibility and be radically honest with yourself. Okay, I have to choose right now. And in this moment, this hard situation, I could go back to the old limiting belief that doesn't serve me, that maybe was here to protect me, but no longer is suiting me and what I'm working on accomplishing. Or I can choose the new belief, the one that sees me as I want to become, the woman, the man, whoever it is that I want to be, and embody that, even when it doesn't feel right, even when you think imposter syndrome tries to show up, even when it doesn't feel natural or authentic. You allow yourself to move through the process. When you move through this process, you take action, not with force, but with full presence. You allow yourself to embody a whole new identity. This doesn't come from reading a script and just saying, okay, now it is. This is what it is now. It comes from taking the action, speaking to yourself, speaking to others as if you are already that person right now. My limiting belief of not good enough was seriously overcome utilizing all of these tools, and I couldn't be more grateful. And I want these tools to be a service of an offering to you, and I hope that you take some of them, write them down, give them a try. Everyone is different, and it's going to look different for everyone, and I think that's what makes it so special, because you get to figure out your own unique way. You get to try and experiment with different tools and different techniques so you can find the best way for you to release limiting beliefs, release all limitations at that, and move on and move up into your best version and your best self. And that limiting beliefs don't die with logic. They die with action, love, and compassion. And that having a limiting belief is a wound, and wounds can heal, especially when they are seen, heard, held, and felt with care. Something that I realized through practice and over time is that every time I showed up for myself, that I utilized vulnerability as a tool, that I utilized forgiveness as a tool, and that I did the release work necessary, I became my own proof. And by becoming my own proof, I naturally overrode that narrative and that limiting belief that I previously had from before. Every single time that I did that, I celebrated. Every single win, whether it was a micro win or a macro win, I celebrated. That celebration led me to convincing myself that there was just no other way of being, and that I could truly embody the person that I wanted to become here and now, present tense, even if it wasn't who I was yet. Releasing that negative belief for me opened a world of possibilities. I realized that I can let go mentally and viscerally. I could trust my nervous system completely. And that in itself is a huge win. It's peace of mind and peace of body. I realized that every time I showed up, every time I followed through, I recognized myself as a leader, as someone who didn't have that limiting belief. And it was that much easier to go back, do the work, have the hard conversations, be open, be vulnerable with myself, with others, and release the stagnant energy that was holding me back. If this resonated with you, we'd love to have you part of the community. Go ahead and check out wearemovewithintention.com. You can apply there for one of our programs to see if we can serve you in the best possible way. At the end of the day, this is not easy work. I'm not saying that it's easy. However, it is simple. It's a choice. Utilizing different tools that serve you best to get rid of limiting beliefs that hold you back from your highest and most fulfilled potential. That's exactly the case in this example of mine. And I'm so very grateful that I took the time to go through those 4 or 5 steps, utilize the move method, and really get in deep down and dirty on that limiting belief and release it and let it go. Because it no longer exists in my biology, in my neurology. And because of that, there's so much room for expansion. There's so much room for possibility. And there's so many opportunities and doors waiting to open. Those limiting beliefs are only there because of a wound. And like I said, a wound can heal. A wound can heal. It's not your truth. It's not your story. It was never my truth and it was never my story. And once I released it, I reclaimed my own power around it, and I got to choose with intention the identity and the belief system that I actually wanted to embody. And when you do that for yourself, not only does that open up a bunch of doors and possibilities, it connects you on a whole nother level to yourself through confidence, through love, through connection, and through truly being aligned with who you're meant to be. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you can use some of those tools to blast your limiting beliefs from the past out of sight and out of mind. Because if they don't serve you, if they don't light you up, your belief system, they should be gone. They should be in the trash. Use these tools, use different things. There's tons of different modalities out there. This is just a personal story of what I got to experience and how I got rid of a limiting belief that was truly holding me back in a lot of my leadership roles and now responsibilities. I hope that you found this useful. Really appreciate you guys being here and listening. And we would love to know, drop a comment below if you've ever had something like this happen to you, if you've used other modalities, other tools, what has worked for you. Please leave a comment. We love this because the more that you engage and you let hear, you give other people inspiration to go out and try for themselves different tools and different ways of releasing limiting beliefs so that they can be their best and most connected version as well. Thank you guys so much for being here, for allowing me to share this experience and this story with you. I really hope that those tips and tools are helpful and that they serve you in some shape or capacity, whatever it is that you're going through, and that you get to move through intention through it all. Go ahead and like this channel if you found this useful. Subscribe to our channel so that you can find the upcoming podcast that will be launching soon. And if you want to be part of our community, look for the link below. We're going to drop that here so you can register, and we'll be sending out tools on this kind of work as we go along. Thank you guys so much, and I can't wait to see you back here soon.